The federal government extended its foreign buyers ban until 2027. Its intentions are to reduce the competition for Canadians when it comes to purchasing a home, as well as improve or help to improve affordability. And I am extremely critical of the foreign buyers ban and what the intentions are, but actually what it could be doing to Canada and to Canadians as we look deeper into the actual foreign buyers ban and what I think it's its problems, its shortfalls, and what maybe the government is intentionally overlooking or unintentionally overlooking. So we'll talk about that and more on this week's episode. So we welcome you back to the channel. It's Friday, Finance Fridays, and I'm your host, Anthony with In Touch Mortgage Solutions. And we invite you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Don't forget to hit that notification bell and like, share, and comment on the video. So let's get right into it. We heard from Chrystia Freeland, the Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance, not too long ago, talking about the foreign buyers ban being extended until 2027. Here's what she had to say on the reason why they've extended it.
Our government announced a 2-year extension on the existing ban on foreign buyers of Canadian housing. This means that the ban will now be in place until January 1st of 2027. For years now, foreign money has been coming into Canada to buy up residential real estate. This has fueled worries about Canadians being priced out of housing markets in cities and towns across the country, and particularly in major cities, particularly in Vancouver and Toronto. By extending the foreign buyer ban, we will ensure houses are used as homes for Canadian families to live in and not as a speculative financial asset class.
So as you can see, there's intentions here on how they plan to see this particular ban play out for the next 2 years. We should take a second to rewind and understand that in 2023, the ban came into effect, but was quickly walked back into certain provisions in regards to language because of the fact that it was limiting the ability for development. It was limiting businesses and corporations that were coming to Canada, not to buy up residential real estate, but to actually build projects. So if we take that and we understand it, look, there's a lot of problems here, right? We know there's loopholes. There's so many different loopholes within this foreign buyers ban that allows people to still purchase a home. I think it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. I think it's a political cover to give them the shielding from individuals, especially with election coming up in the next little while. But I really think they missed the boat here. Now, one thing that we've noticed is the difference between a foreign buyer and foreign money, because there is a distinction. Now, when we think about foreign money, we have to understand that yes, there are individuals that are speculating. They maybe don't have the intention to ever move to Canada. They're just looking to park their wealth in a more stable economy or in real estate. And that can obviously distort levels, it can distort real estate prices, and we get that. But generally, the foreign buyer is maybe a little different, right? That it may be someone who is planning to immigrate to Canada in the next short term, right? We do know that Canada introduced 1.2 million Canadians into Canada over 2023, and we've spoken to a few of these individuals who were waiting for their permanent residency card, their status to be able to purchase a home, to forego the 20% buyer's tax in Ontario. So there's a difference between a foreign buyer. Now, one quick side note on the foreign capital. Someone who is a Canadian citizen that works maybe or lived in the US or in Europe and generated an income other than Canadian dollars, and they're bringing that money into Canada, is not a foreign buyer. As I said, they are a Canadian citizen working abroad, bringing the money that they've earned back into Canada. And that is most of the time what we're talking about here. Right? Because we definitely are not disagreeing that foreign money from individuals that do not plan to ever live in Canada have distorted markets over the past. But since about 2015, when BC introduced its foreign buyers tax and then Ontario quickly copied, we were at 15, now we're at 20%. That number decreased significantly, right? Okay, yes, damage has been done, but around 1 to 4%, I think, is the amount of foreign buyers that we're talking about. CMHC estimates at around 2%. But anyway, there's a little range there. Not a huge number when we think about it, but Nonetheless, it is a number that most Canadians would prefer not to be competing against. You don't want to be in a market competing with even 1% more competition. So that, I think, is the idea. But generally, from our experience and what we hear from individuals, is these foreign buyers that are purchasing homes, they are generally purchasing luxurious homes like luxury condos, luxury real estate, multi-million-dollar mansions. That foreign money is coming in and buying up different types of homes. Now, obviously, there could be some cross-pollination with regards to entry-level homes. As I said, the foreign buyer that's coming to Canada, planning to migrate into Canada because they're bringing their family over, is a different scenario as opposed to the one who's just buying a multi-million-dollar property because they want a second home, right? This is a different conversation. But nonetheless, the demand for the foreign buyer who's migrating to Canada is the same. They're not changing. It doesn't change, right? So if that foreign buyer is now coming into Canada with the hopes of living in Canada and starting a family here and planting their roots, well, are we expected to believe that the government is now saying that, look, they have to come to Canada with their paperwork, maybe with a job, but no place to live. They have to find a property, they need to rent. So at the end of the day, they will potentially buy, whether they wait for their permanent residency card or they're going to pay the 20% tax if they're able to. They still want to live and need a place to live. So the demand doesn't change, right? The demand doesn't change for that individual. On top of that, they're now moving to Canada and temporarily putting themselves into the rental market pool. By doing so, they're taking away a potential for an average Canadian who maybe can't afford to buy a home and is actually increasing the rental amounts, the rents that they have to pay, but also limiting the amount of homes that are available for them to rent, right? So you have to look at it that way. If an individual's coming and says, look, I'm willing to pay that 20% to purchase a home ahead of my arrival here in Canada, then why not let them pay that, right? Even if it's 1 to 4%, the intention is that they will actually be contributing to the economy. And I'll explain this, why I'm saying that, because most of these foreign buyers who are arriving, they want to buy pre-construction, okay? They want to buy something that's going to be built and aligned with their arrival in Canada, right? So they're looking at these pre-construction developments because they can buy them on paper and they can basically move into them in a specific timeline. Now, that's not to say that there's other things that happen here, but generally from what we see from the ground floors, they're looking to buy that property and move into that property at some point. In order for that development, whether it be a condo, a townhouse, a subdivision with detached homes, the builder is required to meet a pre-sale condition. They need to sell X amount of homes in order to actually get a shovel in the ground. Before they can get a lot of their labor force to start working on that home, they have to have an amount sold. The problem is that if we say, look, you're not allowed to buy any home, right? You're not allowed to even compete in a pre-sale opportunity. Well, developers are losing some of that opportunity to sell those pre-sales, especially now when a lot of investors are not in the market. They're opting not to contribute into the higher priced markets. And we know that investors make up a huge percentage of pre-sale condos, right? We know this. But ultimately, if we don't see developers come to the table with a project that actually gets its pre-sales met, then we're not actually creating any additional inventory. We don't actually have new supply coming to the market. We don't have the economical benefits of having more people working. And more importantly, we don't have the revenues that the cities themselves, let's use Toronto as an example, that are generating from that builder. Don't forget, that builder has to pay permits, developments, they have to pay transfer taxes, they have to pay all kinds of fun stuff, which is about 26 to 30% of the construction cost in Toronto, which is absolutely incredible. When you think about it, it is literally a huge amount of tax that they're paying. Now, on a side note, if you think about it, they're paying that 20 to 30% in cost. That cost gets passed on to the end user, right? Obviously, that has an impact on the price. But at the end of the day, the end user is paying that price.
What development charges are basically taxes or levies imposed by the local government?
Yeah, absolutely. So in Ontario, they're to pay for the big roads and parks and community centers and that kind of thing. They're how cities make big capital investments. And London is not unusual that across the province, we've seen development charges go up about tenfold since 2004. 2004. So yeah, we've had 900% inflation in both land costs and development charges in just 20 years.
Now, let's say, for example, what happens if the city themselves say, okay, we're going to chop some of these development charges, so on and so forth, just for the sake of argument. Even if they chop that, where are they going to make up that lost revenue down the road? It could be billions of dollars over the next few years, billions that the city is losing. And I'm highly suspect that the federal government is going to provide them with money. We just saw Olivia Chow in Toronto talking about increasing taxes and also, threatening the federal government. So we can see that these issues with bringing new inventory to the market are having wider spread impacts. And if we spread that out across Ontario and other provinces, well, hey, we could be in for some significant problems. So at the end of the day, if we don't have individuals that are able to buy these pre-sales, pay that income tax or that actual foreign buyer's tax, we're losing potential revenues. Here's the other thing. When you think about that 20%, where does that 20% go? That 20% that they would have paid obviously goes back into building more homes. It goes back into building infrastructure. It's supposed to go back. So in my opinion, I think that either the federal government overlooked that potential thing, because now they banned it. They said, okay, Vancouver, Toronto, they make tax money. Maybe we don't have to give them as much. We can reallocate some of our funds to other programs. But now they might have to start kicking back more money to these other provinces, depending on the situation. That's a problem. Why ban it? They already have taxes in place there. It's just basically look at that and say, why are we losing revenues here? We could be making more tax law, more federal tax on all this together, right? More people working, more people paying income tax, so on and so forth. The story goes on. The implications are massive. By banning it, they've cut that all out, right? That's the bottom line. So now we have to think about, okay, what are the problems here? Well, if you buy a pre-construction home, it's built, is it going to sit vacant? Is it a speculation? That's tax for that, right? If that individual buys it under the wrong context and they leave it vacant, they're going to pay that 1% tax. They're going to pay the speculation tax. They're going to pay the foreign buyer's tax, as opposed to waiting till they get here, then go out and compete in the market. I really don't see that as a viable option. What I really think the government should have done is said, okay, really define who these buyers are, where that money's coming from, what the intention is, and if the intention isn't legitimate, then they can go back and tax them. But really say, you're a foreign buyer, you want to migrate to Canada, you're starting the process to move to any province in Canada, wherever you would like to move. Once you've started that process, you can buy the home, right? You can buy that pre-construction, only pre-construction. You can't buy resale, leave the resale alone, but you can buy pre-construction. You will have to look at paying that 20% tax if you don't end up becoming a Canadian citizen. You have certain obligations. Put in some criteria for these individuals to say, look, if you move to Canada, you get the 20% back. I mean, legally, there are certain ways that can happen. Why don't they say buy a pre-construction condo, you pay the 20% on closing if you haven't got your permanent residency card. If you do, congratulations, now you've purchased your home, and one less person in the buyer pool competing against the rental property or competing against other homes in the market. I mean, that's just one suggestion. Let them buy pre-con, not resale. That would have been a probably better solution in my mind, but ultimately, I could be wrong, I could be right. You let us know in the comment sections below if I got it spot on or if I'm missing something. Let me know. But we'll leave the video here, wishing everyone a wonderful Friday and an even better weekend ahead. Thanks again for clicking. Thanks for watching.